back, Shadow Dorks. It is I, Grim Games, and today I want to go through my Alchemist class that I've been brewing this week as a stretch goal for my Kickstarter. But first, a word from our sponsors. My Kickstarter, Grim Games Issue 1, The Last Isle of the Dread Legion. We've so far hit our pledge goal of $1,000. We're at $1,500 right now with 52 backers, and we're $500 away from hitting the stretch goal, $2,000. If we hit that goal, I'll be able to commission some art for The Alchemist. So pledge today, we got 12 days left. So one of the things that inspired my Alchemist class was Kelsey's Ranger. I really like the herbal remedies. Right outside of the box, when you start the Ranger, you have 5 herbalism abilities that you can start using. Of course, some are more difficult to pull off at such an early level, but like the curative, you got to get lucky to roll that one. But I like having that toolkit right away. If you're a priest or a wizard, you're going to be gaining a lot of spells, basically a lot of extra abilities over the lifespan of your character's career. So while the Ranger might have a lot of utility right out of the get-go, over time, that's probably, in my opinion, going to get overshadowed by a high-end priest or a high-end wizard. And that's okay. Not every class has to scale all the way to the end and become some kind of god. Some classes are better in the early game and help the party to actually get to god status. So when I'm thinking about the Alchemist, I'm thinking about that kind of dichotomy. I don't want this class to replace a priest or replace a wizard with like a whole litany of abilities, but I'm thinking about that early game toolkit and also giving you some fun into the higher end. So transmutation is the core of the Alchemist, right? Turning some items into something else. Historically, you had like the desire to turn lead into gold, or certain reagents into the elixir of life, or trying to discover the Philosopher's Stone. So what I've done here with their first litany of abilities, these transmutation formulas, you have that kind of early game spread of DC 11 to 15, starting with a basic offensive ability, turning items into silver, which is useful for overcoming certain resistances, a middling DC that has some AoE potential, an interesting regenerative that yet has a difficult DC, and kind of the signature ability here is turning items into gold, which, again, should not be abusable. That's why it's the high 15 DC, because it allows you to gain normal treasure and thus XP, so XP through an ability. So this should be not easy to accomplish. You'll see with transmutation, whenever you fail these int checks, not only can you not use that formula for the rest of the day, like typical spells, but you also suffer con damage. So if you're getting con damage from other things, it does heal per rest, but if you're low on con or you have something else draining your con, that could quickly put you in a bind, and you might possibly self-delete. So odds are they're not going to be able to abuse this one too much. And then also consider, after you get out of the early game, it takes a lot more XP to level up, so it kind of balances itself out. A normal treasure is only worth 1 XP at the end of the day, typically. Much like the Bard, or the Ranger, or the Thief with certain abilities, the Alchemist specializes in several big brain areas. I thought this particular ability, Quinta Essentia, of transferring benefits or curses, or even the intelligence consciousness of an item from one item to another, I thought that was a kind of interesting, untapped sort of niche. That could be kind of cool. So let's say you roll up a random treasure item, a fancy magic sword, but with a debilitating curse, and maybe it has a really obnoxious personality. The Alchemist can specialize in, removing the bad parts, and you get to keep the good parts, or taking one of those good parts and putting it into your basic sword, right? That could be some unique fun that the Alchemist brings to the table. The talent table has some unique twists. If you roll Snake Eyes, you get the Philosopher's Stone, which really ups your power level by giving you advantage on all your checks and makes you peak Alchemist. But kind of inspired by what I've seen in the carousing table, how you can acquire NPC allies and enemies. I took inspiration from that in this particular chart. If you discover the Philosopher's Stone, now people want it from you, and they're coming after you. If you roll double sixes, if you roll boxcars, you unlock the Elixir of Life, and you also gain some NPC allies. The way I think of this, the way I would run this, there's nobles and kings and emperors that are seeking immortality, eternal life, and they're going to try to befriend you. There's this famous story of Genghis Khan trying to find the Elixir of Life and bringing in Taoist alchemists to tell him, hey, can you make this? Can you find this? Is it real? So again, on the talent table here, with these other outcomes, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? You discover hidden formulas. I've got 3, right? So again, kind of like a balancing act here. There aren't a huge additional amount of spells like there would be a full spell casting class, but you find a few more formulas, but it's a little bit more open-ended than just 3 at first glance. The one that really gives you a lot of creative or expanded potential is the magical tincture, and we'll talk about that in just a second. First of all, expanding on this idea of turning, lesser metals into gold or whatever, right? Adding mithril on top of that makes total sense for Shadowdark. Now, this one, of course, because mithril is a fabulous treasure, basically, you want to be careful that you can't just cast your way into a bunch of experience points. That's why the DC's got to be high, but also adding on normal failures, rolling on the alchemical mishap table. So there's really a big risk-reward piece there. So the magical tinctures are different every time. When you roll this talent, what you do is you'll go to your Shadowdark book, and you go to page 287, and you'll find this list of potions, potion benefits, and potion curses, and you'll roll 2d12, basically 1d12 on one side, 1d12 on the other, and make note of the outcomes. You choose one of those results. So do I want the benefit or do I want the curse? And with the benefit, it becomes range close, and you can use it as like a buff or a boon for you or your allies, depending on which one it is. Or if it's a curse, you throw that flask and it becomes a bane on your enemy. These can be really powerful, like just throwing a flask and all of a sudden that enemy turns into a 1 HP newt for 3 rounds. But again, alchemy is very dangerous. So these tinctures, right, you have to roll a d6 to determine the DC. It can be low, it can be high, and you do that every time you roll the int check. So you never quite know what the DC is going to be until you roll it. Also, just to be clear, transmutation, all of these abilities, they require you to use up some item in your gear slots. Now, that could simply be like a torch or some iron spikes or something cheap, but everything has a cost, right? In transmutation, you're always taking something and turning it into another thing. You're never creating it out of nothing. Finally, the elixir of life, right? So this is high-level DC. Obviously, this is extremely rare. You're creating an elixir that does everything, and you cease to age. But again, for balancing, right? If you fail to make one, you automatically trigger that mishap. Also, if you try to double dose on this ever, like an entire character's career, oopsie daisies, you might die. The Alchemist titles are nothing crazy. The lawful ones are more like, a part of an officially sanctioned guild. The neutral ones are more like, academic and study. And the chaotic ones are more on that sort of occultish side. And of course, the alchemical mishap's my favorite part. I had to make the one inspired by my Gen Z and Gen Alpha students. You're cooked. At least for the beta. At least for the beta. It'll probably change the name at some point. Take a look at these and see, all the crazy things that can happen to you. I think my favorite is probably number 10, It's Alive. As you transmute something, oopsie daisy, you actually created an animated object that attacks you. And I love to delve into different parts of the Shadowdark book and use those tools. And this one has your game master roll up a monster generator with all of these random twists and turns, as well as the mutations that occur from the Make It Weird page. I think that's perfect for an alchemical mishap. So let me know what you think of this Alchemist class and whether I'm completely off the rails. Love your feedback. Give it a test at your table and let me know how it goes. And be sure to smash the like, hit subscribe, comment down below what was your favorite aspect of the Alchemist that you saw today. And be sure to pledge for the last Isle of the Dread Legion. I would love to see this Alchemist come to life. And may your torches never go out.